Hello, Geeks and Gamers. It's Sir Guido back again with another video. This time I'd like to talk about something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, something I've been dealing with a lot lately, and that is Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds. It's a great game. In the company's own words, well, first of all, it's a company called Pinnacle Entertainment Group. They're the ones who make Savage Worlds. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and this may be completely wrong, should take it with a grain of salt, Pinnacle started out making the game Deadlands. Deadlands is an awesome setting. I never had a chance to play the old game. I do know a little bit about the old game. I had actually made a character for the game that I was supposed to play in. It never happened. But it was just an amazing setting, pretty cool game. They kind of took that theory, I guess, and turned it into what is now Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds is a generic system. Basically, what it is it's, as it says here on the back, it's fast, furious fun. It's very simple. It's really not difficult at all. I've got a character sheet here. It's a very basic one. I'm trying to show you what I'm talking about. You can see the sheet's very simple. You have 5 attributes, and you have skills. So it's a point-based system. You start out with 5 points to spend on your attributes, and then you have 15 points to spend on skills. All your attributes start at a D4, and every time you spend one of those 5 points, it raises from a D4 to another die type. So D4 to D6, D6 to D8, D8 to D10, D10 to a max of D12. Then your skills, you spend 1 point to buy a skill at a D4, and then 1 point to raise it up. With the caveat that the linked ability, so say shooting is a great example. Shooting's linked ability is agility. If you have an agility of a D8, you can take agility all the way up to a D8, only 1 point per level. Once you get it to a D8, if it's going to go past whatever your linked ability is, it takes 2 points. So if you have a D8 in agility and you want to take your shooting to a D10, it's going to take you D4, D6, D8, D10. It'll actually take you 5 points to get shooting at a D10. Now, there's also another thing that I love about some games I've played before. It kind of started with me with Legend of the Five Rings, is the idea of advantages and disadvantages. This game does have that, and they call them edges and hindrances. Hindrances are obviously the disadvantages, edges are the advantages. Now in the basic book, these quick rules, the Explorer's Edition, technically this is all you need to play the game. This is $10. Now unfortunately, I believe they're going to be phasing this out because they just came out with their new rules, which is called the Deluxe Edition. It's a hardback book. It's bigger. It's thicker. They've kind of updated the rules a little bit, changed a few things, streamlined a few things. And I believe that book is $20, maybe $25. I'm not positive on that. But there are still some of these out there. I think you can still get this in PDF form through like Drive-Thru RPG. So you can... I mean, for $10, you can't beat it. I mean, it's a whole role-playing game itself that you can use for just about any setting you can think of, and it's only $10. I mean, how can you beat that? Now, as I said, this is just a very generic game by itself. You can use it to do anything else, but it's going to take some work. For example, these sheets that I've got here that I'm working on, these pre-generated characters, are for a Ghostbusters game that I'm going to be running at my local game store for Halloween. Basically what I did is I took these basic rules, I went onto the internet, greywolf.critter.net, I think is the website, a guy that kind of did all the work for me, I guess, went ahead and put in all of the setting-specific edges, the hindrances, talked about how to sort of work the different skills that are already there and turn them into Ghostbuster-specific skills. For example, shooting, instead of actually shooting a gun, it's going to be shooting the proton pack. Throwing is more for throwing like a trap to get the trap exactly where you want it, rather than, you know, throwing a ninja star or a dagger or something like that. And then the other big things are the knowledges. if you go back to Ghostbusters, Egon is kind of like a nuclear physicist, and he comes up with all these cool things based on his nuclear science. Because in the 80s, being a nuclear physicist, you were the know-all of everything. So one of the big knowledges here is going to be, a couple of my smarter, sort of nerdier type characters here have the knowledge of nuclear physics. Also have knowledge occult, knowledge supernatural, because hell, they're ghosts, But it didn't take very much for me to get the flavor of monsters using just this basic set of rules. But you can get even deeper and get a really good flavor of a game by picking up some of the things that they have. There's just a couple listed here on the back. There's something about some of them I don't. Deadlands. As I talked about before, Deadlands is where this whole thing started. It is a Western theme setting with some supernatural elements. It's really cool. They got a thing called Ghost Rock, which is kind of like a souped-up coal with, again, like a supernatural bent to it. It can be used to make lightning guns and strange think steampunk in a western setting. So kind of back to like Wild Wild West, the movie with Kevin Kline and Will Smith. It's kind of like that in a way, but again with a bit more of a supernatural element. It's a very, very cool setting. I totally recommend it. I'm going to be running a game in Deadlands using Savage Worlds in November, probably, again at the store. And I'm probably going to do a couple of these other settings as I get around to getting them, because I want to get people exposed to Savage Worlds, because it is a great game, and it is so easy. Some of the other settings, we have Slipstream. I don't know much about Slipstream, but from looking at it, I think it's kind of like a super sci-fi time travel-y sort of thing. I'm not sure. I just kind of going off of first impressions. Necessary Evil. Necessary Evil is also a great setting. It's a superhero setting. The heroes in the setting are all gone. It's just the villains, the evil people that are left. But the world is getting invaded. The supervillains are going to have to become the heroes. They're going to be the ones that have to save the day. So all the characters, for the most part, are probably going to be supervillains, but they're going to have to do heroic things. So that's a pretty cool little setting. I like that one a lot, too. And then Weird War, it's Weird War 2. It's kind of like World War 2, but again, with some supernatural elements thrown in. Sort of like, Nazis and space Nazis and things like that. But then we also have Space 1889, which is a really neat setting. I've played a game in that setting. Think back to some of the pulp era movies. I'm not talking about Indiana Jones. I'm talking about going back further, where the general thought in terms of science of the day was that places like Mars and everything else were just like here. They just looked different. They still had regular air. Aliens and everything were like us, etc. And the whole idea of Space 1889 is that we have colonized Mars, and it's full of like dinosaurs and lizard people and Nazis and English dandies and things like that, and you're kind of doing a pulp type game in this weird setting. It's really interesting. So that's a pretty good one too. But there's tons of them. There's lots of different settings that are out there available. They can go with Savage Worlds that you can purchase the setting books. If you don't want to buy setting books, if you just want to check out the $9.99 book and throw a setting onto it, you can go on the internet. Online, there are different places. There's a website I know called Savagepedia. I think there's another one called Savage Heroes. Just go out there and Google Savage World settings, and people have made their own settings based on popular properties, just like the Ghostbusters game. I know I've seen Harry Potter done in a Savage Worlds setting, or Savage Worlds way. Basically, what the nomenclature, what people normally use is they say it's a savaged version of whatever it is. I've seen savaged Dukes of Hazzard. I've seen savaged Firefly. I've seen savaged on D&D, actually. I've seen Savage versions of lots of different things. Going back to Legend of the Five Rings I talked about before, there's been a Savage Worlds version of that. You can pretty much use Savage Worlds to do just about anything. Now, whether or not it's good at that is kind of remains to be seen. I've seen it so far work well for basic modern stuff, like the Ghostbusters, the settings that they have, like the pulp. Hell, Savage Worlds is made for pulp. I mean, if you want to play a pulp game, Savage Worlds is your obvious choice for a basic, easy thing that's just decent little mechanics. Um, I've seen so many Savage Worlds, but it's just, I don't know. It's just it's a really fun game. It is very easy up. You pretty much. Let's go back a little bit in mechanics. The way I was talking about things. You've got your abilities and you've got your skills. Your skills are pretty much going to be your primary use for whatever it is you're going to do. If you don't have a particular skill to cover an activity that you're going to do, you fall back to an ability. Or sometimes abilities can be called into play for different things, like fear checks or something like that. But every time you roll whatever die type it is in the skill or ability that it pertains, plus all PCs also roll what's called a wild die, which is a D6. So you put those together. You don't add them together, but your target number, your target to hit, is 4. Unless you get into like a fighting situation or something like that, your target is almost always 4. Now sometimes you can have modifiers to your roll based on the situation. If it's a fairly easy task, you might get a bonus to the roll. If it's a little bit more difficult, you might get a negative to the roll. But either way, your target's pretty much almost always going to be 4. So say, for example, if you're rolling a D4 and a D6, you have a 1 in 4 chance on the D6 of rolling a 4 or better, and on the D4, on the D6, you've got a 50-50 chance of rolling a D4 or better. But then, in addition to that, the dice explode. What that means is if you roll the highest number that's on the die, you re-roll that die, and you add it to what 4. So if I were to roll a D4, and I get a 4, okay, I pick that up and I roll it again. If I roll a 4 again, that's 8. Well, I pick it up and roll it again. Then I get a 2, so I get a total of 10 on that D4. So that's what I roll. No matter what I roll on the D6, if the 10 total on the one die is higher, then that was my total rolled. So if I had no modifiers, my target number is, and I rolled a 10, that means I succeeded. And it also means I succeeded with a raise. What a raise means is the number of times you exceed the target number with that amount. So if the target number was 4, then if I exceed it by 4, so if I roll an 8, then I get 1 raise. Then I roll a 12, I have 2 raises. 16, 3 raises, etc. So what that means is in some cases, when you succeed with a raise, you get extra bonuses to what you're doing. For example, if you're shooting something and you're looking for damage, if you succeed with a raise, you're going to do some extra damage. Stuff like that. In order to do maybe something a little bit more difficult, your GM might say, yeah, your target's still going to be 4, but you need to succeed with a raise in order to do that. Things like that. So technically, your target is actually going to be an 8. Except if you do it that way, like the way I would do it if I was a GM, say somebody's like, oh, I want to jump up on this ladder, swing over onto a platform, and then shoot that guy. Well, I say, okay, you're going to have to succeed with a raise to do that, but roll your acrobatics or roll agility or something like that. But really what I'm going to do is if they succeed with a raise, then they get to do everything they said. But if they only succeed, they just roll a 4, I'll just give them a partial success. Yeah, you jumped on the ladder and you got over to the platform, but you didn't, you missed with your shot because you didn't get everything rolled into 1. You didn't, succeed with a raise. So stuff like that. It's a very open system. It allows people to narrate things really well. Even when you get down to the edges and the hindrances, they're not all mechanical. For example, there are some, there's one in here that says heroic. Heroic is basically that you don't leave anybody behind. There's one that's loyal that says you never betray your friends. things like that. It's uh, very nebulous in terms of mechanics, but it's something that is very descriptive for your character, which is things that I really like a lot. Trying to think right here. Pacifist. You only fight in self-defense if you have take it as a minor hindrance, or you can't ever harm a living creature if you take it as a major hindrance. So, I mean, there's a couple cool little things in regards to that. Lots of role-playing opportunities within the game. It's just very loose and easy. Does not take a whole lot to learn the game. It's really not difficult. One of my favorite parts of the game is how quick it is. Some games, if you're looking, the characters I'm making here for my Ghostbusters game, the ones that I made, I wanted to make them a little bit better than starting characters. And their ranges aren't like level 1, level 2, etc. They call them a little bit different things. You start out as a novice, then you move on to seasoned, veteran, heroic, and legendary. I wanted to start these guys off as seasoned to give them a little bit of skill, because I'm assuming they're all going to be like in their late 20s to early 30s. So they're going to have been around for a little while and picked up a few things in the course of their lives. But even though they're seasoned, they're not seasoned as directly as Ghostbusters. For example, I've got right here this character. His name is Mike Houston. He's going to be my leader for the party. He's an ex-Marine, so he went through several years of training as a Marine. So yes, he's got shooting and throwing, and he's got fighting, survival, etc. But he's got a couple of other things that he picked up just being in the Marines that maybe wouldn't, well, fighting is a great example. I mean, if you're fighting ghosts, you're not going to be punching ghosts. But I gave him a D8 survival because he, as a Marine, would go through survival training.
As well as just make them a little bit, to give them more options. Let's put it that way. Uh, I mean, I want the characters to be interesting. I want them the players to look at this character and say, hey, I'm playing a leader guy, and I was a Marine, and so I could probably use my tactics to understand how to get this ghost in a position to where we can nab it and get it into a trap. Okay, so here's how I'm going to do that, and I want that to be something that they can do. A good example here is I've got a character. Let me find it here. He is an ex-con. Paul Thomas, right here. He's an ex-con. He got out of jail as a I don't know, I guess a felony criminal, and hire him. But the Ghostbusters, because they need people, they hired him, and he doesn't have a ton of skills that pertain to being a Ghostbuster. I mean, yes, he has shooting, yes, he has throwing. Again, he has fighting, he has gambling, he has guts, which he might need, but he has stealth, lockpicking, climb, and streetwise. Most of those things are going to have anything it ought to. They might if the person creative and deals with them creatively, but it makes the character more interesting. And it didn't. I mean, I made all of these characters with all this in-depth characterization to make them interesting. It took me about an hour to make 10 characters. I'm most likely not going to have all these available when I sit down at the table. I might actually end up making some of them into like a second group of Ghostbusters, maybe from a different town or something. I don't know yet, but I have 6 players right now signed up for the game, and I don't want to go higher than that. So I think I might show up with all 10 of them for them to choose from, just so they have some choice. But I think I might kind of earmark a few people as being particularly well suited for the group, like the leader, the Marine. One healer in here, she is a nursing school dropout. She dropped out of nursing school because she became a mother. She got pregnant while she was in nursing school. She's also an ex-cheerleader. Her and my... I have a... Here we go. I have the muscle of the group. Justin Ballard. He's the ex-high school quarterback. He and Julie Larson, the mom, are actually going to have some interesting interactions because they dated back in high school. So again, but like this healer type, she's got a bunch of superfluous skills that really don't necessarily pertain to ghost busting, but she does have those healing abilities. Yeah. Now, with healing in this game, it's not magical healing because it's not going to be a supernatural type fantasy or game or whatever. It is going to be based sort of in the real world, but Savage Worlds does do a good job of abstracting stuff like that. The way I'm going to handle it is her healing roll can do a maximum of 1 wound. Never more than that. And she's going to have to roll a decent amount to do that. Now, what I can do is there are different levels of things. There's shaken. Shaken is like sort of you don't necessarily take a wound, but you've maybe gotten a pretty nice scratch that really kind of freaked you out. Well, she can wrap that and tend to that wound so that get rid of that shaking condition. That's kind of the way I'm going to handle that. I'm different ways of doing healing. There are a lot of different suggestions here in the book, but I kind of rambled on a little bit there about Savage Worlds and a lot more about my Ghostbusters game than I think I really intended to. But I think within the last couple of 20 minutes or so, I've really kind of gotten across that Savage Worlds is a good game. You should give it a try. I just can't really explain how much easier it is than running something that's a little bit more in depth. Like my other big game right now is Pathfinder. When I set up to run a 4-hour game session of that, even if it's part of a continuing campaign, it takes 3 to 4 hours easily to come up with some NPCs and get together my monsters and everything. It usually takes a little bit longer than that if you start Worlds Explorers Edition or Deluxe Edition by